Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. As former President Trump vows to fight the Colorado Supreme Court ruling to keep him off the ballot, what's next? We have the analysis.
And voters in Colorado are sharing their thoughts on the unprecedented move from the state Supreme Court. Hear what residents of Douglas County have to say.
New developments in the Rudy Giuliani case. A D.C. judge made a ruling regarding collection of funds. Find out what's next for Giuliani.
10 Americans gain their freedom from Venezuela prisons, and a fugitive called Fat Leonard will be extradited to the U.S. Here are the details of a new prisoner swap orchestrated by the Biden administration.
Israel is proposing a new deal with Hamas in exchange for hostages still held in Gaza. We take a look at the current situation with an expert on Middle Eastern affairs.
Houthi terrorists are disrupting trade flowing through the Red Sea as exporters scramble to find new shipping routes. We sit down with the host of NTD Business to unpack the situation.
Looking for some travel stress relief this holiday season? Well, Germany has the solution. We took a look at a new approach that uses man's best friend to help relieve travel anxiety.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome, everyone. Today is Thursday, December 21st.
Yeah, and some are saying that the move to keep Trump off the Colorado ballot is backfiring, like former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who said it has forced his GOP competitors to support Trump against the judges.
Right, and that's what they've been doing. While Haley and Christie both have been saying that it should be the voters who decide and not the court. So in today's top news, will former President Trump actually be barred from the Colorado primary?
A new move by the Colorado Republican Party and the latest reactions from President Biden. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
Trump's team is saying that they have full confidence that a U.S. Supreme Court will quickly overturn this ruling by the Colorado Supreme Court, which says that former President Trump is disqualified from appearing on the state's 2024 ballot because he had participated in an insurrection. But it's important to note that the Colorado Supreme Court itself put a hold on its order pending any appeal action by January 4th. And the deadline for the state secretary of Colorado to certify candidates on the ballots is actually January 5th. So it means that unless the U.S. Supreme Court rules to remove Trump from the ballot by then, it will basically mean that Trump will still appear on the ballot despite the ruling.
Not Trump to the court.
And President Biden, while saying he won't get into the specific ruling itself, said this about Trump.
You saw it all. Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. And no question about it. None. Zero.
Meanwhile, the Colorado Republican Party today announced that if the ruling by the Colorado Supreme Court actually stands, it would consider ditching the primary ballot system and switch to a caucus system instead, which will allow them to basically bypass the ballot issue here.
Now to tell us what's next in Trump's ballot challenge in Colorado, we hear from Hans von Spakovsky, the manager of the Election Law Reform Initiative and senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Hans, thank you for your time this morning.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Do you think that the Supreme Court will rule on this before January 4th?
Well, I hope they will. They obviously have the option of whether to take this case, but I just don't see how they can turn it down. This has never happened in the entire history of the United States. It is unprecedented. In fact, it is really an unlawful decision by political ideologues who are masquerading as judges. They have no lawful authority to do this, and in fact, they are violating prior interpretations and court precedents by doing this.
So let's get this straight. So if Trump does appeal to the Supreme Court and they don't act by January 4th, then his name would just stay on the ballot all the same?
Well, yeah, supposedly, but like I said, this situation is unprecedented. The Colorado Supreme Court, by the way, we should mention, this was a split decision. It was 4-3. 4 Democratic judges all saying that he should be taken off. And in essence, what they've done is they have said, well, we're not going to allow the 4.5 million registered voters in Colorado to make their own decision on who should be a candidate for president and eventually who should be president. It is one of the most anti-democratic moves I've ever seen. And in fact, this is the kind of thing that, we sanction, the United States, sanction other countries for. And in fact, we have sanctioned other countries like Nicaragua and Venezuela for kicking the opposition candidate off the ballot.
Right, and this is extremely complex legal territory here, and it's so consequential as it involves the potential leader of the free world here. So what does the Supreme Court have to weigh when it's ruling on this case?
Actually, I don't think it's a complex case. I think it's actually very easy. And here's the big mistake that the Colorado Supreme Court made. If you look at Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, this is the provision in question. It only applies if Donald Trump was previously an officer of the United States. The U.S. Supreme Court has in the past, within the last 10 years, for example, said that term, officer of the United States, does not refer to people who are elected. It only refers to individuals who are appointed to positions within the executive branch. The way to understand that's very easy. Joe Biden is not an officer of the United States because he was elected. On the other hand, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, is an officer of the U.S. because he was appointed to that position. So the Colorado Supreme Court made a clear and obvious error. In fact, they thumbed their nose at the U.S. Supreme Court saying an officer of the United States does not include elected positions when they ruled the opposite way.
Right, and Hans, it's so important to look at the exact wording in the Constitution in order to sort through this. And there are sources that show that prior drafts of that article actually show that president was included and then it was later taken out in the final draft here. Now, based on the way the Supreme Court has been ruling, how do you expect them to decide on this case?
I actually think the probability is very strong that President Trump would get at least a 7-2 decision in his favor. The two most liberal justices on the court, they've been very political in many of their decisions, so I don't know if they would join the majority and make it 9-0. But I think they can probably get 6 justices for sure, and maybe a 7th, Justice Kagan, in at least a 7-2 decision in his favor.
Okay, Hans, and just briefly here before we let you go, there is lawsuits brewing in about 13 other states challenging his appearance on the ballot. So what do you think that is going to happen? Will the Supreme Court ruling just set the precedent for all of those cases?
Yes, and that's another reason why it is imperative that the Supreme Court take this particular case because of all these other pending cases. They need to issue a definitive ruling that short circuits not just the Colorado case, but all these other cases also.
Hans von Spakovsky at the Heritage Foundation, thank you so much for weighing in on this.
Thanks for having me.
RFK Jr. also weighed in on the Colorado Supreme Court's ruling barring Trump from the state's ballot. He posted on X that every American should be troubled by the court's decision. He says Trump was deprived of a consequential right without having been convicted of a crime.
Kennedy also said if Trump is kept out of the office by court fiat, his supporters would never accept it, and the country would be ungovernable.
Voters in Colorado are sharing their thoughts on the state Supreme Court's ruling. Take a look.
This coffee shop in Douglas County, Colorado goes by the simple name of coffee. And it's here where we have a simple question for customers.
Tell me your gut feeling. Do you think it's a good thing the Colorado Supreme Court did that or not a good thing?
You know, I'm not the biggest fan of Trump, but I don't think people should be taken off the ballot necessarily.
This man is a political independent in a very Republican county. So here in the county seat of Castle Rock, it's easy to find loyal Trump Republicans who feel the same as this man.
What do you think of the Supreme Court decision?
I think it's unfair.
How come?
Government shouldn't get in that position to control votes for certain candidates.
But we did find this Democrat who says that's precisely what this court needed to do.
I think it's a great decision. I think that when you try to overturn an election, you don't get to run again. You know, we have a 14th Amendment for a reason.
Back inside coffee, loyal Trump supporter Tony Klanaris doesn't take this decision seriously. She thinks the Supreme Court taking Trump off the primary ballot is a result of game playing.
Why do you think they're playing a game and not doing their job?
They're part of the game.
And what's that game?
Not being honest.
But you think that Trump has been honest?
For the most part, yeah.
Her friend concurs, saying that she feels
outraged, absolute outrage. That
Why were you outraged?
They're going to take away our choice based on their personal beliefs, because I don't believe they're speaking for the people.
But Elle Gray believes the justices are. She's an independent who has voted for Donald Trump, but says she won't be voting for him again if he ends up back on the ballot.
I agree with their ruling that he engaged in insurrection, yes.
So do you think it was the right thing to do?
For my state, yes.
Keith Raymond has voted for Donald Trump twice, but says this time around he's supporting Chris Christie. His opinion is more nuanced.
It's a complicated issue, but if the law is the law and the Supreme Court is stating it, we have to abide by it. Doesn't mean I'm a fan of it.
Many Coloradans are still digesting the court ruling. The varied opinions in this shop about Donald Trump, symbolic of countless discussions in this state and this country. Kelsey Nistel is a Democrat.
I think that what he did was unacceptable for our country, and he should face the consequences for that.
Jake Herman is a Republican.
I think if that was a legitimate thing to happen, if he was part of an insurrection, he would have been arrested. He wasn't arrested.
Some Trump supporters say instead of picking another candidate, they would write Trump's name on the ballot. But under the court's ruling, a write-in vote for Trump would not count. And over to the lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani. A D.C. court says the two former Georgia election workers can immediately try to collect the awarded money from the former New York City mayor.
Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss were awarded a combined $148 million in the defamation case. Typically, they would have to wait 30 days to collect.
The judge's ruling comes after Giuliani reportedly refused to reveal his net worth and stated repeatedly that he was broke. The judge dismissed that claim. He said it was hard to square with the fact that Giuliani could afford a spokesperson who joined him daily to trial.
Attorneys for Freeman and Moss have identified assets Giuliani holds in New York and Florida. The woman sued Giuliani over accusations of election fraud in the 2020 presidential election. They say it caused them emotional distress and reputational harm.
A House committee is investigating allegations of plagiarism against Harvard's president.
In a letter sent to the university, the Republican-led Education and Workforce Committee says it's looking into Claudine Gay's record over a period of 24 years.
The allegations were first circulated by conservative activists following Gay's congressional testimony about anti-Semitism on campus.
Last week, she submitted corrections to two scholarly articles published in 2001 and 2017. But looking at the articles, it seems that Gay did not address even clearer examples of plagiarism while she was studying for her PhD at Harvard in the 90s. Those include an instance in her dissertation where she copied lines verbatim from another source without citation.
In addressing the allegations of plagiarism last week, neither Harvard nor Gay have corrected or acknowledged these earlier instances from when she was a student.
The House committee has requested several documents relating to plagiarism from Harvard and wants a written response by December 29th.
A federal judge yesterday blocked parts of a California law that would have banned the concealed carry of firearms in certain places.
Those include places of worship, public libraries, amusement parks, zoos, and sporting events.
The law applies to those with licenses to carry a concealed weapon. The judge in the case granted a preliminary injunction and called the law, quote, repugnant to the Second Amendment and openly defiant of the Supreme Court.
Gun rights groups quickly celebrated Carney's decision. The president of the Firearms Policy Coalition said the court's decision is the required result under the Constitution.
California is planning to appeal the decision. State Attorney General Bob Bonta said, quote, the court got this wrong. And up next, Senator Marco Rubio sounding the alarm over flaws in the U.S. export control system.
Hear why he's demanding the Biden administration blacklist yet another Chinese microchip firm. And Venezuela frees 10 Americans held prisoner in exchange for an ally of the country's president. Find out what role the fugitive known as Fat Leonard played.
Protests erupt in Argentina over President Milei's recent actions to transform the economy. More in his decree signed yesterday, bringing over 300 economic deregulation measures.
Anyone who's ever sold a home will tell you it's really hard. And it's one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. That's why who you work with matters. Together with HomeLight, we take care of every detail.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
Three of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
We've been spending a lot more time than ever at home these days, so maybe now you've just noticed cold air coming in from a couple windows, or that your patio door isn't closing fully, which means you're losing heat in the winter, losing cooling in the summer, losing money all year long. And that means now is the time for new windows and patio doors from Renewal by Andersen. Most installations are usually done in just one day. Renewal by Andersen windows and doors can help lower your heating bills and air conditioning bills with their most energy efficient glass available. Only their windows are made with Fibrex material, proven to be 2 times stronger than vinyl. And they're backed by a 20-year warranty. And right now, when you buy one window or patio door, get one at 40% off. Plus, there's no money down, no payments for 12 months, and no interest for 12 months. Plus, an additional $200 off your entire purchase.
1-800-218-1510.
Adopting you was the best decision in our life. And I am so proud to call you my son.
Good to have you back. The White House says it's working with Mexico to resolve the 2 rail closures at the Texas border.
The railway has seen a growing number of migrants train hopping to enter the U.S. illegally.
A spokesperson also said the White House will, quote, surge personnel to the region.
This comes as daily encounters with illegal immigrants at the border set a new all-time record this week. Over 12,800 apprehensions were reported on Monday. That's according to an internal U.S. Border Patrol report. Monthly encounters are also on pace to set a new record with 190,000 encounters in December so far. That's an average of 10,000 a day this month.
Some of those released into the U.S. were given appointments with ICE up to 8 years away. Fox News obtained an immigration notice to a Colombian migrant to check in at a New York location in 2031.
Major farm groups sent a sharply worded letter to DHS Secretary Alejandra Mayorkas yesterday. It said the crossings could easily be reopened. The groups say the trade route closures are causing steep export losses to growers. They assess the bridges could be run with as few as 5 employees per crossing. 10 Americans imprisoned in Venezuela have been released. The United States freed a close ally of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in exchange for letting them go. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the deal.
Maduro's ally who was released is Alex Saab, a Colombian businessman who was granted clemency by President Biden and sent back to Venezuela. Prosecutors accused Saab of siphoning off some $350 million from Venezuela via the United States in a scheme that involved bribing Venezuelan government officials. He denies the charge and has not yet been convicted in the U.S. The U.S. also demanded the return of a fugitive defense contractor known as Fat Leonard as part of the deal. Leonard Glenn Francis pleaded guilty to scamming the U.S. Navy out of millions of dollars. He escaped from house arrest in September 2022 after cutting off an ankle bracelet, but was captured by authorities in Venezuela weeks later. Some of the freed Americans have already landed at a military base in San Antonio, Texas. Evan Hernandez says he was subjected to psychological mistreatment.
So they keep you there in inhumane conditions, and they make your life a living hell.
Savoy Wright says he's very grateful to the United States of America and for all the love and warm faces.
Free at last, thank God Almighty, free at last.
Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs Roger Carstens says one of the most important things the United States government does is protect the safety and security of U.S. citizens.
Especially when they're overseas, and especially when they're taken either hostage or they're wrongfully detained by another country.
Carstens adds that there are no more Americans left in Venezuela that are being held in the prison facilities. President Biden says it was fine to negotiate with President Maduro's government because it freed American people held illegally.
We made a deal with Venezuela at the whole free election.
3 of the released Americans had been accused of trying to enter Venezuela illegally. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Senator Marco Rubio is urging the Biden administration to blacklist another Chinese microchip firm.
Chip designer Brite Semiconductor has been found to be part owned by China's top sanctioned chip maker, SMIC, a corporation restricted from sensitive U.S. tech.
It also offers its chip design services to at least 6 Chinese military suppliers, all while maintaining U.S. investment and without violating any export regulations. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the senator's call to action.
Brite Semiconductor's second largest shareholder and number 1 supplier, microchip maker SMIC, was added to the U.S. entity list by the Trump administration in 2020. The corporation is barred from importing some advanced AI chips from U.S. suppliers over its apparent ties to Beijing's military. But despite that, Brite still has access to U.S. investors and technology. That includes software from American firms like Synopsys and Cadence Design. A Reuters examination of Brite firm statements, regulatory filings, tenders, and other means found that Brite offers services to at least 6 Chinese military suppliers. Senator Marco Rubio says it shows the U.S.'s current export control scheme doesn't work. The GOP lawmaker urged Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo in a letter on Wednesday to hit Brite with the same restrictions imposed on SMIC, saying swift action is needed now to stop China's chip industrial base from growing stronger. Rubio is also calling for more restrictions on shipments of chip design software to China. Concern over Brite is rising on both sides of the aisle. Democratic Senator Bob Casey points to access to U.S. investors. Silicon Valley-based Norwest Venture Partners has roughly a 13% stake in Brite, largely backed by Wells Fargo, the 4th largest bank in the U.S. Congressman Mike Gallagher, chair of the House Select Committee on the CCP, is also asking the Commerce Department to do more to prevent U.S. technology flowing into China's military. The Reuters report found no evidence that Brite or its U.S. suppliers had violated any U.S. export laws. And Brite might soon access a wider range of investors. The Shanghai Stock Exchange gave the green light this week for Brite to make an initial public offering after delaying its bid to go public over its relationship with SMIC. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
The United States, South Korea, and Japan have condemned North Korea's most recent ballistic missile launch. In a joint statement, the three nations urged Pyongyang to engage in dialogue without preconditions.
North Korea fired the missile on Monday. It reportedly has a range to hit anywhere in the United States.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the foreign ministers of South Korea and Japan say the countries stand together against North Korea's development of weapons of mass destruction.
The U.S. and South Korea have increased joint military drills against threats from the North. North Korea has tested a range of ballistic missiles in recent months. It also launched its first military spy satellite in November.
North Korea says it has a sovereign right to operate a ballistic missile program for self-defense.
And according to North Korean state media, the country's leader says Pyongyang would not hesitate to launch a nuclear attack if an enemy provokes it with nuclear weapons.
Over in Argentina, President Javier Milei is taking his plan to transform Argentina's economy to the next level. The new libertarian president signed a decree yesterday with over 300 economic deregulation measures.
The sweeping initiative allows the privatization of state-run industries and the easing of government regulations. Milei says it's a means to boost exports and investment. Here's President Milei after signing the decree.
The decree of necessity and urgency that we are presenting today is intended to bring the process of economic regulation that Argentina so badly needs in order to start growing. I want to thank you. May God bless the Argentines and may the forces of heaven be with us. Thank you very much.
The announcement came just hours after thousands in Buenos Aires took to the streets to protest Milei's deregulation actions last week.
Some Argentinians received social support directly from the government. Others are supported by social organizations with direct links to federal offices. Milei's administration says many of these groups force people to attend protests in exchange for support.
The head of the new Human Capital Ministry told beneficiaries Monday that no one can force them to protest by threatening to take away their plans. Milei's government this week also stated anyone blocking off streets could be removed from the benefit list if they're on one. The ministry says although protesting is a right, so is being able to move freely to go to work.
A recent University of Buenos Aires poll found 65% among those surveyed agree with banning street blockages. And stay with us. Israel says they're ready for another temporary ceasefire to release more hostages. Hamas wants a full ceasefire. What's the next step to free the hostages? We have analysis.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken calls for countries to start making demands of the aggressor and not the victims in the Israel-Hamas war. Here are the top diplomats' reflections as the year comes to an end after the break.
Did you know ESG is impacting every part of your life? From rising gas prices to global food shortages to out-of-control inflation, even losing your freedom of speech and being censored on the internet. It's all being driven by ESG ideology. Who's in control? What can you do about it? Find out in The Shadow State, the first documentary exposing ESG. The ESG movement of governments and corporations operates in the shadows. Only the light of truth can expose it. Watch The Shadow State documentary, streaming now.
Are diapers destroying your confidence? Men's Liberty can help. Our discreet external device is safe, sanitary, and keeps you dry 24 hours, day and night. Step into the spotlight and do more of what you love with Men's Liberty. It's been ordered over 5 million times by thousands of satisfied fans. Call now to get a free week supply with your first order. There's no obligation, just the opportunity to try the most revolutionary solution to incontinence ever made. Unlike diapers, Men's Liberty is a long-term answer to dealing with incontinence. Make the choice to finally move forward with your life by calling Men's Liberty today. We'll answer all of your questions about how our completely unique device works and how Medicare can cover it. Dealing with expensive, uncomfortable diapers is no way to live. Men's Liberty lets you get back out there with more freedom and confidence to be you. Ready to find out more about our offer to get a free week supply? Then don't wait. Call Men's Liberty today.
I'm Arlene Richards here at the U.S. Supreme Court, and we are NTD News.
Thank you for staying with us. The Israel-Hamas war has turned families apart. Hamas and other terrorist groups are still holding 129 hostages in the Gaza Strip.
Israel says they're ready for a ceasefire to release more of them. Will another hostage deal happen soon? NTD's Jason Perry has the latest on the war.
As the war rages on, Hamas terrorists released another video on Wednesday showing what appear to be attacks on Israeli troops in the Gaza Strip. This terrorist is seen waiting in a hallway before an Israeli tank, highlighted in red, drives by and he fires at it. The Hamas video even showed an attack on an IDF bulldozer. And another terrorist group also fighting in the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, released a hostage video showing 2 Israelis in captivity. One of the hostages, Elad Katzer, now looks like this. And the other hostage, Gadi Moses, now looks like this. Gadi Moses' son, Yair Moses, said they hadn't heard anything about his father since he was kidnapped, and the video was the first sign of life they'd seen in 2.5 months.
We're happy to see it, but from the other end, we are very worried. He's looked very thin, very exhausted, 5 or 10 years older than what he was 3 months ago, and we're very worried about his condition and his well-being.
And he added this.
We expect Israel government and the negotiator to do whatever they can in order to release him and all the other hostages. To keep releasing them, priority number 1 task for everyone in Israel.
Approximately 129 hostages are still being held captive by Hamas and other terrorists. Hamas has said they will not release any hostages until the war has ended completely. On Wednesday, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, who normally resides in Qatar, met with Egyptian officials in Cairo to discuss the war. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had this to say about the idea of stopping the war completely.
We are continuing the war to the end. It will continue until Hamas is eliminated, until victory. Whoever thinks that we will stop is detached from reality. We will not stop the fighting until all of the goals that we have set are achieved: the elimination of Hamas, the release of our hostages, and the removal of the threat from Gaza.
Also on Wednesday, President Biden was asked whether there'd be a hostage deal anytime soon. He said they're pushing for one, but there's no expectation at this point. Jason Perry, NTD News.
For some analysis on the hostage negotiations, we bring in David Wormser, an analyst for Middle East Affairs at the Center for Security Policy. It's good to have you back this morning. Good morning, David. So first, with Israel and Hamas, as we heard back at the negotiations table, for who do you think has more leverage in the negotiations this time?
Well, I actually think at the moment, neither side has particularly much leverage over the other, although I think on balance at the end, perhaps Hamas has slightly more. The reason for that is that Israel knows the war will take, despite what the United States is pushing Israel on, the war is going to take another couple months, at least 4, 5, 6. In one case, defense minister said a year, and the hostages don't have a year to live under the conditions they're living. So there is a strong pressure on that level to bring them home at the cost of maybe a week or so ceasefire in exchange for which they live, because they won't last another 5 months or 6 months. The timeline of Israel's war is longer than the timeline that they can stay alive in the captive situation that they're in.
I see. Now Hamas is asking for more heavy-duty prisoners than before. So what do you know about who is in Israelis' prisons right now? Who could they be referring to?
Well, there's some real terrorists with real blood on their hands, both from a point of view of actually conducting terrorist attacks themselves, but second of all, being masterminds behind terrorist attacks. Marwan Barghouti is a name that comes up all the time now. He's the one who started the Al-Quds the Al-Aqsa force in the Fatah force that is now very heavily engaged in terrorism. Was involved in October 7th. He's been sitting in an Israeli jail for a decade or two, and they want him released, as well as a number of others around him. That's an organizational issue as well. If they are released, they operate in the West Bank, and they can definitely begin to plan really dangerous terrorist attacks on Israel from there.
So also knowing that Yahya Sinwar was released in 2011, I believe, as part of a negotiation, and then you just saying Hamas has a little more leverage, how much of a sacrifice do you think Israel is willing to make for the hostages, also considering the pressure that is growing significantly domestically for them?
Yeah, I think you just hit all the right points, which was the pressure domestically is building on them, because the hostage families are organized. They have their own lobbyists, and it's becoming a political issue. They have some currency among some of the ministers in the current government, specifically Gantz, who poll-wise right now is very popular. So there's definitely pressure on the Israeli government. Sinwar, you mentioned Sinwar, he was released in a previous hostage deal, Gilad Shalit, about a decade ago, and he proceeded to plan and organize Hamas to such a level that it masterminded this operation. One of the statistics that's really hard to really digest is that 24 of the people who were released in the Gilad Shalit deal a decade ago, where one hostage was released for 1,000, 24 of those were responsible for about 36 Israeli deaths since then. So that one soldier cost, in many ways, 36 Israelis, which is not a calculation any government wants to make, because you can't choose who lives and who dies. It's just not what we do. So this is really difficult for the Israelis. But in the end, I think Hamas might make the decision for Israel.
Wow. Okay, interesting. So I want to talk about humanitarian pauses that you said might be part of this for a week or so again. But would this also buy Israel more time for their operations in Gaza, as Blinken has said the last time?
Well, the United States definitely has shown pressure. I think the pressure from the United States is driven to some extent politically, that the war is a real, it's the definition of ambivalence for this administration, because politically the two parts of their base, the liberal and the progressive, one is pro-Israeli, one is anti-Israeli, and they lose one, gain the other, regardless of what choices they make. So they've given Israel time, because I think politically that's the slightly less risky route for them. But at the same time, clearly, if Israel is showing a willingness to pause for 2 weeks, a week, whatever time period, it does ease some pressure for a long-term ceasefire. So I do think that, yes, it helps a little bit. But ultimately, I think America's support for Israel right now, this administration's support, is driven also by a political calendar.
Thank you so much, David Wormser, for your great analysis this morning.
Thank you.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken addressed the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war and the conflict in Ukraine in his end-of-the-year remarks yesterday.
The top U.S. diplomat reflected on Russian President Vladimir Putin's recent comments about Ukraine having no future. He emphasized Ukraine's need for the United States' critical and ongoing support. Here are Blinken's thoughts on the Israel-Hamas war.
What is striking to me is that even as, again, we hear many countries urging the end to this conflict, which we would all like to see. I hear virtually no one demanding of Hamas that it stop hiding behind civilians, that it lay down its arms, that it surrender. This is over tomorrow if Hamas does that. This would have been over a month ago, 6 weeks ago, if Hamas had done that. And how can it be that there are no demands made of the aggressor and only demands made of the victim?
Blinken says Israel has an obligation to remove the threat of Hamas and minimize civilian casualties. He says among U.S. priorities are helping Israel ensure an October 7th never happens again, freeing the hostages and preventing the conflict from spreading.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected the idea of a ceasefire, saying the notion is unmoored from reality. He vows Israel will keep pressing its offensive, targeting Hamas until the end.
And the leader of the Yemeni Houthis vows to retaliate if Washington takes aim at Yemen.
This as the U.S. is spearheading a multinational coalition to interrupt Houthi attacks against cargo ships passing through the Red Sea.
Any American targeting our country will be targeted by us, and we will make American battleships, interests, and navigation a target for our missiles, drones, and military operations.
The Iran-backed group has been escalating missile strikes against vessels sailing through the Red Sea in an attempt to show support for Hamas terrorists amid the Israel-Hamas war. Those strikes are forcing ships to either cancel transit or reroute to Africa, which is causing gas and shipping prices to rise.
The U.S.-led security pact, joined by 9 other countries, plans to ramp up patrol in the Red Sea to deter and respond to future Houthi attacks.
Coming up, exporters are scrambling to find alternate routes for shipping after commercial vessels in the Red Sea come under attack from Houthi pirates.
And the holiday season is upon us. Travelers are rushing to airports and shoppers are pulling out credit cards. We sit down with the host of NTD Business to unwrap this busy season, so stay tuned.
Beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun.
Tired of scrolling Netflix? Trying to find something that's worth watching? Want to skip the censorship in mainstream media? Well, now you can with Epic TV. New exclusive content every day with over 100 never-before-seen movies, films, and documentaries. Available and streaming now at your fingertips. For a limited time now, you can get 60% off Epic TV by subscribing or upgrading to a yearly plan. Plus, get an additional $10 credit to rent featured movies on Epic Cinema today. Skip mainstream narratives and find quality family entertainment from the comfort of your very own home. Say no to big tech and subscribe to Epic TV.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
3 of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Welcome back. We have Don here, Don Ma, host of NTD Business, to discuss shipping disruptions in the Red Sea.
Exporters are scrambling to find alternative air, land, and ocean routes amid a wave of attacks in the Red Sea. So Don, how severe are these disruptions in the Red Sea?
Well, first of all, we have to keep in mind that the Houthi attacks have disrupted a key trade route for the North America, for Europe, and with Asia. So estimates are that, according to some experts, there could be somewhere around at least 3 months of disruptions here. And the rerouting could be adding some 10 to 12 days in addition for transit time for some shipments. And it seems like the consumer goods sector probably will see the bigger impact here to the disruptions. And major US retailers like Walmart, Macy's, Nike, Target, and IKEA all depend on this route, and IKEA has already said that there's going to be disruptions, possible delays, possible availability constraints for some products. And oil giant BP, as well as shipping giant Maersk, also said they're temporarily suspending their operations in this region, the Red Sea. And some companies that transport products like toys, electronics from Asia have also said that they'll stop sending vessels in this area. But let me put this into a bigger picture for you guys. Despite all this, what I've mentioned with the disruptions, a lot of the companies that I've seen have said that either they're seeing some delays or that they won't be impacted at all. So this is not really a dire situation for some of them. And as for shoppers, they shouldn't really expect the price of things they normally buy to increase, if at all, and it's unlikely to actually have a very significant impact on the overall US economy, which I think it's good news.
Definitely good news that it doesn't trickle down. So, excuse me, we did hear before the break that shipping prices do increase. So by how much do they increase?
Well, we have to understand that shipping container scarcity is leading to the increase in container prices. So prices have risen somewhere around 10% at some European locations. Shipping companies are charging extra fees of thousands of dollars as well. Insurance premiums have gone up from $2,000 to now $10,000 for some. And in addition to container prices, energy markets are taking a hit as well. They're seeing some impact. The price of oil was up around 6% this week, hovering around $80 a barrel. But despite all that, there's also good news here in terms of prices, because the impact on consumers at the pump should be minimal, because consumers probably won't even be able to feel the difference of just day-to-day increases and fluctuations to what's happening because of the disruptions. And for container prices, they're also probably likely to fall back between 3 to 9 months. Because there's actually a degree of overcapacity within the market here. Container scarcity caused by the attacks won't really put a dent in the overall market in terms of capacity, and rerouting is only expected to impact a relatively small portion of the overall shipping container capacity.
Yeah, and it is really serious because it's unclear whether the U.S. and their allies will be able to actually provide escorts for 100% of these shipping vessels. And if they don't, there might need to be retaliatory strikes on Yemen, in the Houthi positions there. And then if that does happen, this whole conflict could escalate, and that would make even less likely that these shippers would use that route anyway. So, Don, what else do you have for us?
Yeah, that is a very good point. But if the delays are limited in time, for example, just a couple of weeks, I think the impact will be less. But if it stretches on for multiple weeks, the impacts will be much bigger. But anyways, in other news, the holiday travel surge kicks off today, according to the Transport Secretary Administration. They predict it's going to be one of the busiest travel days of the entire season. The TSA says they expect numbers to surpass last year's holiday season, and the majority of Americans will drive actually to their holiday destinations. But AAA says it's going to be a blockbuster holiday season in the skies. A AAA spokesman said that more people will be traveling now than they ever will and ever have with flights at or near the capacity between now and the new year. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg says that weather disruptions could be on the radar. He also says that 2023 saw the lowest commercial flight cancellation rate in the last 5 years for the busy stretch between now and New Year's Day. And the FAA has opened some additional military airspace as well.
Yeah, that's really good news, kind of getting back to normal after the pandemic and everything, seeing a lot of this travel. So what about the holiday purchases? What can you tell us about those?
Right, so in terms of that, it seems like a growing number of Americans are dodging higher credit card interest rates by turning to buy now, pay later services as they buy holiday merchandise. While they can be a useful tool for shoppers, consumer advocates are raising red flags about cash-strapped shoppers adding months-long loans. These loans can actually have interest rates topping out at 36%. The maximum lenders can charge in many states, that is. And according to experts, they're concerned about the spike in shoppers turning to buy now, pay later for gifts this Christmas, when higher costs for housing and food, as well as borrowing costs on everything from credit cards to car loans, will squeeze budgets. And financially vulnerable households that use loans to buy food and other essentials can't see their debt snowball, which puts them in an even deeper hole. And for those shoppers, the loans may not offer a lower interest alternative to the 30% interest rates on the most expensive store credit cards.
Yeah, certainly sounds risky, especially if the interest rates are at 36%. Well, thank you so much for this overview, as every day. Don Ma, host of NTD Business.
Thank you.
Coming up, looking for some travel stress relief this holiday season? Well, Germany has the solution. We take a look at a new approach that uses man's best friend to help relieve travel anxiety in just a minute.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with Homelight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth. Without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark. resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
I'm Dave Martin here in New York City, and we are NTD News.
Good morning and welcome back. We're heading over to Germany, where visitors at Berlin Airport can take advantage of a new method to relieve their traveling stress.
The unusual but very effective approach involves the use of therapy dogs, which travelers can pet and cuddle. And the new method is having some positive results. Let's take a look.
Traveling can be a stressful mission, especially during the holidays. Passengers at Berlin Airport are delighted at the new program, which appears to be working for children and adults alike. It's an incentive introduced by the airport together with Therapy Dogs Brandenburg Association.
They are definitely totally curious right now and are also wondering because they haven't seen dogs here before. There have been Lego statues here, but dogs are of course even more exciting.
The dogs offer a welcome distraction for children and those who experience anxiety with the prospect of boarding a plane.
Well, I think if you have time, it's definitely a relaxing pastime here, and my children are very quiet, at least now.
All dogs belonging to the association have undergone training with their owners. Kai Swin volunteers for the association and is one of several dog owners walking the airport with her dog.
Many passengers tell us that they have dogs. They talk to us in Portuguese, Chinese, Albanian, so even if we don't understand what some of them are saying, you just realize that they are happy, and that's nice.
Many travelers react very positively to the four-legged visitors.
I think it's fantastic, yeah, because I've heard about this program where the dogs are there to reduce flying stress. So, yeah, it was great to see it. I think it definitely will work. Like, who wouldn't love to see a little dog when you're getting your flight?
But Kai says there are also some who are not fond of dogs.
We can see in the way people look at us as they walk towards us whether or not they like dogs. Some people don't, and that's understandable. We can tell by their looks, and so we just walk past them.
After all the cuddling and excitement, of course, the dogs also need a break.
We make sure, of course, when we're here at the airport, that the dog's working time doesn't exceed 1 hour. We take a short break after half an hour. We pay attention to the dog's signs and whether it feels well or not. Based on its well-being, we carry out our mission.
According to the agreement with Berlin Airport, the Dogs Association visits 12 times a year. The Therapy Dog Association also visits other institutions, such as retirement homes or daycare centers. Kostemenes, NTD News.
What a great idea. And according to what Dawn said earlier, maybe a good idea for the holiday traveling season in the U.S. as well.
Oh yeah, good point. And yeah, those dogs need a break too. You know,
yeah.
We gotta talk to the dog union owner, the dog union heads there.
All right, we'll head to a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi everybody, I'm Kelly Wright, host of America's Hope right here on NTD. Guess what? We've got a special celebration because it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. So coming up on NTD, we're going to be celebrating a joyful Christmas, and you're all invited to watch as we celebrate Christmas in music and song from around the world. Join us on NTD.
Good morning and welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. As former President Trump vows to fight the Colorado Supreme Court ruling to keep him off the ballot, what's next? We have the analysis.
10 Americans gain their freedom from Venezuela prisons, and a fugitive called Fat Leonard will be extradited to the U.S. Here are the details of a new prisoner swap by the Biden administration.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken calls for countries to start making demands of the aggressor and not the victim in the Israel-Hamas war. The top U.S. diplomat shares his reflections at year's end.
New developments in the Rudy Giuliani case. A D.C. judge made the ruling regarding the collection of funds. Find out what's next for Giuliani.
Worried about not getting your deliveries on time this Christmas? Major retailers say they have your back. Find out the new measures aimed to speed up delivery times.
Preparations for the 2024 New Year's celebration on Times Square are underway. One key element just arrived after a cross-country trip to see its Broadway debut.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome everyone. Today is Thursday, December 21st. In today's top news, former President Trump's team says they have complete confidence the Supreme Court will quickly overturn the Colorado Supreme Court ruling.
The decision disqualified Trump from appearing on the state's 2024 ballot after 4 out of the 7 justices deemed he participated in insurrection.
The Colorado court put a hold on its own order pending any appeal action by January 4th. The deadline for the Colorado Secretary of State to certify candidates is January 5th.
The Colorado Republican Party says it would consider switching to a pure caucus system if the decision stands. And earlier I spoke with Hans von Spakovsky, the manager of the Election Law Reform Initiative and senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. I asked him if the Supreme Court would rule on Trump's case by January 4th.
They obviously have the option of whether to take this case, but I just don't see how they can turn it down. This has never happened in the entire history of the United States. It is unprecedented. In fact, it is really an unlawful decision by political ideologues who are masquerading as judges. They have no lawful authority to do this, and in fact, they are violating prior interpretations and court precedents by doing this.
So let's get this straight. So if Trump does appeal to the Supreme Court and they don't act by January 4th, then his name would just stay on the ballot all the same?
Well, yeah, supposedly, but like I said, this situation is unprecedented. You know, the Colorado Supreme Court, by the way, we should mention this was a split decision. It was 4-3. 4 Democratic judges all saying that he should be taken off. And in essence, what they've done is they have said, well, we're not going to allow the 4.5 million registered voters in Colorado to make their own decision on who should be a candidate for president and eventually who should be president. It is one of the most anti-democratic moves I've ever seen. And in fact, this is the kind of thing that, you know, we sanction, the United States, sanction other countries for. And in fact, we have sanctioned other countries like Nicaragua and Venezuela for kicking the opposition candidate off the ballot.
Now, based on the way the Supreme Court has been ruling, how do you expect them to decide on this case?
I actually think the probability is very strong that President Trump would get at least a 7-2 decision in his favor. The 2 most liberal justices on the court, you know, they've been very political in many of their decisions, so I don't know if they would join the majority and make it 9-0. But I think they can probably get 6 justices for sure, and maybe a 7th, Justice Kagan, in at least a 7-2 decision in his favor.
Thank you so much for weighing in on this.
Thanks for having me.
The White House says it's working with Mexico to resolve the 2 rail closures at the Texas border.
The railway has seen a growing number of migrants train hopping to enter the U.S. illegally.
A spokesperson also said the White House will, quote, surge personnel to the region.
This comes as daily encounters with illegal immigrants at the border set a new all-time record this week. Over 12,800 apprehensions were reported on Monday. That's according to an internal U.S. Border Patrol report. Monthly encounters are also on pace to set a new record with 190,000 encounters in December so far. That's an average of 10,000 a day this month.
Some of those released into the U.S. were given appointments with ICE up to 8 years away. Fox News obtained an immigration notice to a Colombian migrant to check in at New York location in 2031.
More on immigration. Here with us now, calling in live from Panama, is war correspondent Michael Yon to update us on the treacherous Darien Gap migrant route between Colombia and Panama. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I just got back to Panama. Yesterday I was in El Salvador watching some of the flow. I've been watching it all through Central and South America and Europe and just many places. I'm constantly moving around the globe and checking out the situation with the food supply, energy, and the invasions, because that's what they are. Interestingly, now in Colombia, it was announced yesterday that Colombia is going to allow visa-free transit through their airports for members of people from 41 countries, right? And so that includes Iran and Yemen. So if you can get to Colombia now, you can have visa-free travel, which will allow you to get through the Darien Gap, or you can bypass the Darien Gap and go straight to Nicaragua. Now, countries like Venezuela and Nicaragua are reportedly giving out passports and other identification papers said to be fraudulent, but actually the papers are official. The names may be fraudulent, maybe not, I do not know. But they are, for instance, I just got reports last night from Border Patrol. People are showing up with IDs that look like, hey, this person doesn't match the nationality on the official passport, right? And so this is normal stuff. You see, I see the numbers that you just posted about the people coming into the border with encounters, but those are intentionally obfuscated by the Department of Homeland Security. I'll guarantee you those numbers are at a bare minimum 20,000 per day. That's highly defensible. Any Border Patrol person with much access to the internal workings will know that 20,000 is a low number per day, right? And the numbers that they're releasing do not include the gotaways. They don't include the undetected. They don't include the fly-ins, which there are flights 24/7 going from places like Colombia and Guatemala, landing all over the United States.
Right, and Michael, you mentioned a really good point about these numbers here. There are reports that show that there are going to be about 500,000 people reportedly coming through this Darien Gap by the end of this year. So what are you seeing out there right now?
Those reports are probably coming from me, actually. I just got back. I spend months at a time down in Darien, right? I'm constantly down there. And I mean, I know the Darien, you can't really come through Darien without me knowing about it. Now, individuals can, of course, but when it increases, I know about it instantly. On October 6th, the Costa Rican president was down there, along with the Panamanian president. Keep in mind, the date was October 6th, the day before the massacre in Israel. And on October 6th in Darien Gap, Panama, they announced that they're going to more than triple the buses of after the people who survive the Darien Gap get through the Darien Gap. They get on buses and they go to Costa Rica. Those buses up to about October 6th were about 60 a day. They were increasing those to about 200. Now, I just got back to Panama yesterday afternoon, and I'm about to go right back down to Darien Gap now and see how many buses are running, how many people they're building 2 new camps down there, very large camps. You could easily see 1 million people coming through South America alone per month within, I would say, within another month or two.
Right, and Michael,
the
this
conditions
is
are
really
completely set for that.
Very concerning, because considering this is a 10,000 square mile forest, jungle that is easily can, hide these bandits and wild animals that could be attacking these people. And there's just these harrowing testimonies that were given to Doctors Without Borders about people being taken into these rape tents, raped by armed men here. Are we concerned about a surge in these bandits operating?
Well, the bandits, actually, I'm out with them all the time. I mean, I'm in the Darien Gap all the time, months at a time, right? The bandits are, well, on the Colombian side, they're just like normal Colombians and whatnot that are out in the jungle doing robbery. On the Panamanian side, they're mostly Imbara Indians, right? And there's many villages that the aliens have to come through out deep in the jungle. And the Imbara will straight up tell you that some of their young men, unfortunately, with all the aliens coming through, there's a lot of money flowing through. So a lot of these young guys, they don't want to go to school anymore. In fact, we took the mayor up, Todd Bensman and I, we took the mayor up to Washington, D.C. His name is Francisco Agape. I'll be seeing Francisco in the next day or two. He's the mayor of 26 villages down, of Imbara, Wunan villages down in that area.
And Michael, I wish we had
Indian.
more time, because it's really interesting, everything you're saying, and I do really appreciate you taking the time to go down there and be in those treacherous conditions to report back to us. Michael Yan, combat correspondent and former U.S. Army officer, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I was not an Army officer, but I was in the Army.
Well, okay then, thank you.
10 Americans imprisoned in Venezuela have been released.
The United States freed a close ally of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in exchange for letting them go. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the deal.
Maduro's ally who was released is Alex Saab, a Colombian businessman who was granted clemency by President Biden and sent back to Venezuela. Prosecutors accused Saab of siphoning off some $350 million from Venezuela via the United States in a scheme that involved bribing Venezuelan government officials. He denies the charge and has not yet been convicted in the U.S. The U.S. also demanded the return of a fugitive defense contractor known as Fat Leonard as part of the deal. Leonard Glenn Francis pleaded guilty to scamming the U.S. Navy out of millions of dollars. He escaped from house arrest in September 2022 after cutting off an ankle bracelet, but was captured by authorities in Venezuela weeks later. Some of the freed Americans have already landed at a military base in San Antonio, Texas. Evan Hernandez says he was subjected to psychological mistreatment.
So they keep you there in inhumane conditions, and they make your life a living hell.
Savoy Wright says he's very grateful to the United States of America and for all the love and warm faces.
Free at last, thank God Almighty, free at last.
Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs Roger Carstens says one of the most important things the United States government does is protect the safety and security of U.S. citizens.
Especially when they're overseas, and especially when they're taken either hostage or they're wrongfully detained by another country.
Carstens adds that there are no more Americans left in Venezuela that are being held in the prison facilities. President Biden says it was fine to negotiate with President Maduro's government because it freed American people held illegally.
We made a deal with Venezuela at the whole free election.
3 of the released Americans had been accused of trying to enter Venezuela illegally. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And switching gears, earlier I spoke with David Wormser, an analyst for Middle East Affairs at the Center for Security Policy, and I asked him about the newest negotiations between Israel and Hamas.
Well, I actually think at the moment neither side has particularly much leverage over the other, although I think on balance at the end, perhaps Hamas has slightly more. The reason for that is that Israel knows the war will take, despite what the United States is pushing Israel on, the war is going to take another couple months, at least 4, 5, 6. In one case, defense minister said a year, and the hostages don't have a year to live under the conditions they're living.
How much of a sacrifice do you think Israel is willing to make for the hostages, also considering the pressure that is growing significantly domestically for them?
Yeah, I think you just hit all the right points, which was the pressure domestically is building on them because the hostage families are organized. They have their own lobbyists. and it's becoming a political issue. They have some currency among some of the ministers in the current government, specifically Gantz, who poll-wise right now is very popular.
I want to talk about humanitarian pauses that you said might be part of this for a week or so again. But would this also buy Israel more time for their operations in Gaza, as Blinken has said the last time?
Well, the United States definitely has shown pressure. I think the pressure from the United States is driven to some extent politically. That the war is a real. It's the definition of ambivalence for this administration, because politically, the two parts of their base, the liberal and the progressive, one is pro-Israeli, one is anti-Israeli, and they lose one, gain the other, regardless of what choices they make. So they've given Israel time because I think politically that's the slightly less risky route for them. But at the same time, clearly, if Israel is showing a willingness to pause for 2 weeks, a week, whatever time period, it does ease some pressure for a long-term ceasefire. So I do think that, yes, it helps a little bit. But ultimately, I think America's support for Israel right now, this administration's support, is driven also by a political calendar.
Thank you so much, David Wormser, for your great analysis this morning.
Thank you.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken addressed the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war and the conflict in Ukraine in his end-of-the-year remarks yesterday. Here's Blinken's thoughts on the Israel-Hamas war.
What is striking to me is that even as, again, we hear many countries urging the end to this conflict, which we would all like to see, I hear virtually no one saying, demanding of Hamas that it stop hiding behind civilians, that it lay down its arms, that it surrender. This is over tomorrow if Hamas does that. This would have been over a month ago, 6 weeks ago, if Hamas had done that. And how can it be that there are no demands made of the aggressor and only demands made of the victim?
Blinken says Israel has an obligation to remove the threat of Hamas and minimize civilian casualties. He says among U.S. priorities are helping Israel ensure an October 7th never happens again, freeing the hostages and preventing the conflict from spreading. Up next, worried about slow deliveries this Christmas? Find out what major retailers are doing to speed things up.
And Christmas may not have arrived yet, but preparations for the famous Times Square New Year's Eve party is in full swing. See what essential item just arrived after a trek across the nation, right here on NTD News.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with Homelight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
Freedom is not free, and neither is the truth. In order to bring you the facts, our reporters are out there on the front lines getting the true story. Some of them served 10 years of prison in China. We've been censored on social media. Our Hong Kong printing offices were set on fire, and we've been repeatedly attacked by the Chinese Communist Party. But no matter what, we believe that you deserve the truth, and so we'll continue to bring the truth to light. Head on over to getepic.com and try honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Stay tuned to get 2 rolls of alien tape free. You wouldn't stick your mother-in-law on the wall, but you could with alien tape. It just sticks. Just peel and stick to make anything stay in place quick. Brick, pavers, marble, tile, plastic, even leather. Nothing works better than alien tape. You wouldn't stick your fishbowl on a moving car, but you could with Alien Tape. The secret is nano-stick technology that grabs and locks on to secure one side of the surface to the other. Alien Tape secures in seconds, then twist, pull, and rinse to reuse. Call or go online to get your first roll of Alien Tape for just $19.99, plus shipping and processing. But to make this deal really stick, we'll give you 2 more rolls absolutely free. You get 3 rolls of Alien Tape for one low price. Order now.
To order, call 1-800-490-1364 or go to tryalientape.com. So call 1-800-490-1364 or order online at tryalientape.com.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
Good to have you back with updates to the lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani. A D.C. judge says the 2 former Georgia election workers can immediately try to collect the awarded money from the former New York City mayor.
Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss were awarded a combined $148 million in the defamation case. Typically, they would have to wait 30 days to collect.
The judge's ruling comes after Giuliani reportedly refused to reveal his net worth and stated repeatedly that he was broke. The judge dismissed that claim. He said it was hard to square with the fact that Giuliani could afford a spokesperson who joined him daily to trial.
Attorneys for Freeman and Moss have identified assets Giuliani holds in New York and Florida. The women sued Giuliani over accusations of election fraud in the 2020 presidential election. They say it caused them emotional distress and reputational harm.
And if you're still shopping for some last-minute gifts, don't worry, you might be glad to learn some of America's biggest retailers are working to increase their shipping speeds.
Walmart, Target, and Amazon are all in on the shipping wars. Retail experts say it will help them maintain a competitive edge against low-cost Chinese retailers like Shein and Temu. NTD's Cost M&S tells us more about what retailers are doing to keep customers happy this Christmas.
Amazon packages have been arriving at the doors of Prime customers even faster this year. The company's new distribution model divides the country into 8 regions and predominantly ships items from warehouses in those areas.
So the company says, one, it's going to increase shipping speeds, but it's also going to help them lower costs because there's fewer touch points, less people are handling the item as it goes through the different stages.
Another thing Amazon is doing to speed up shipping is growing their same-day delivery sites.
These are warehouses and concepts that the company introduced back in 2015 for their Prime members, and they're really growing the number of sites that they have. Currently, they have 55 across the country, and they're saying they have plans to grow that even more in the coming years.
Previously, the Seattle-based e-commerce giant used to fulfill orders from warehouses across the country. But since July, Amazon said that more than 3/4 of customer orders were being fulfilled within their region, up by nearly 15% from before. Meanwhile, Walmart and Target are working towards narrowing the gap in delivery speed with Amazon, which has set the standard for fast shipping. Walmart has upgraded and automated multiple warehouses across the country to increase efficiency, and is also adding smaller facilities to its stores to help with online orders. Earlier this year, Target announced a $100 million investment in sortation centers, which will likely double the company's delivery volume to more than 50 million packages this year, with a growing number of items delivered to customers the next day. The company is planning to increase their warehouses from 10 to around 15 by early 2026. But according to a commerce strategist, more warehouse space and equipment still leaves Amazon way ahead of its competition, despite efforts by Target and Walmart to catch up. Cost M&S, NTD News.
Preparations are underway for the massive Times Square New Year's celebration.
The festivities are heralded by the arrival of the 2024 numbers shipped cross-country from Los Angeles.
Most of us are still focused on the rapidly approaching Christmas holiday. However, many others are preparing for the massive New Year's Eve celebration on Times Square. The giant 2024 numbers just arrived ahead of the upcoming festivities, ready to make their Broadway debut.
Like all great Broadway shows, we have understudies. So what you're looking at is the understudies making their debut in Times Square, the 2, 0, and 2. They will not be up there. We're just going to be hoisting the 4 up, and they'll be on standby just in case they need to jump in for the performance.
The early unveiling of the numbers is a popular event. Not everyone wants to brave the live crowd of around 1 million spectators.
I come out every year because this is one of my favorite days of the year. I love that I can count down Happy New Year with the numerals before New Year's Eve. I don't have to be out here in Times Square on New Year's Eve. As a local, we try to avoid this place like the plague.
Many people look ahead to the new year with positivity and optimism.
It's a tradition. I do it every year.
Awesome. Why?
I'm starting off the new year with hope, joy, love, good perspectives.
Everything is being prepared in anticipation of the big celebration next week. The future promises to include a new and better experience.
In 2025, we're going to be welcoming a brand new experiential one-time square that the whole world can enjoy 365 days a year.
In case you can't attend in person or watch the festivities on television, here's a sneak peek.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year!
All the way from LA. It's pretty close to here too. Are you going to go take a glimpse?
Oh, well, I'm not sure, but I do remember growing up, I would always watch the Times Square celebration on TV.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, now it's almost around the corner.
Yeah.
Well, but it's true what the lady said. We pretty much avoid that place. All right, we have to wrap up our show now, but we'll keep you updated with the latest information. Stay tuned for our News Today broadcast at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.